Hey everyone, welcome back to The Wave. My name is TyArc, and for today's production tutorial, I'm going to be making a lo-fi house track. So first of all, what is lo-fi house? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, but in other words, it's a more chill type of house music, and I'm a really big fan of this type of house, and it's one of my favorite sort of genres to create. But first things first, I'm going to show you guys what the end result of today's video is going to be, and then we can jump into the actual tutorial. Alright, and here's the end result. Alright, so let's jump into this project. If you've seen any of my other videos on the Wave, you probably know that I really like to use and sort of manipulate samples in my production. And I'm going to say it again, samples are really your friend in making music. They're an amazing tool to spark creativity, and you can achieve some really unique results when just messing around with them. And that's something I'm going to be doing in this project as well. So I've picked out a sort of lo-fi melody that I really like, and I'm going to drag that into the project now. Alright, so here it is. I'm going to play the original sample for you, and then we're going to get to work on it. Alright, cool stuff. I really like how this sounds, and it's very chill and a really nice sounding synth. Alright, now that we know what kind of sound we're going to be working with, I'm going to sort of retune and chop up the sample into a new rhythm and melody that I like, and I'll sort of work through the process with you guys. So one thing that I should point out is I'm working in 115 BPM. I think the 110 to 120 BPM range is really good for this style of house. And the original sample was in 90 BPM, so I just warped it into 115. I think the first thing I'm going to be doing with this sample is transposing it down a little bit, and not too much because it is already pretty deep, but maybe just a little bit. Like I'm going to try one semitone first and listen to it. That's pretty good. I'm going to go a little bit further. So I think once it gets to this point, it's starting to get a little too muddy for my taste, I think. Let me try 2 semitones. It's cool and it's deep, but honestly, I might just stick with 1 semitone because I don't really want to go too deep and too muddy from the original, but I don't want to stay at the original either because I want to switch things up a little bit. Now that we transpose the sample down, I'm going to scan through the sample and just sort of choose spots that I could chop out and rearrange into a new rhythm. Alright, so I played around a little bit and I came up with a couple spots that I think work well together. The first spot I took out was actually just the very start of the sample. It sounds like this. And I just like how that sounds, so I think I'm going to keep that as a start. But I also like this note right here. So I think the next thing I wanted to do, I actually just copied it and put it in this 3 rhythm right here. And I think it sounds cool when you play it like this. I really like how that sounds. So I think that's going to be the first sort of bar. The next note that I picked out was this one. And it's a little bit more dissonant, but there's something about that note that I like, so I'm gonna throw that in the next bar, and I also put that 3 rhythm back again in this note right here. I'll play that part for you. So when you combine them all, it sounds like this. And it sounds a bit weird right now, but I think it's going to sound really cool when we add all the other elements of the track. Alright, after a little bit of time, I've done some processing, I looped it, and I think it's ready for the next step. I'll show you what it sounds like with all this processing going on. Alright, so I'm going to move on to the next step, which I think should be the bassline. Now, since we're using the sample as the main melody, it might be a little tricky to write a bassline under it, but something that I've been doing is actually just adding an EQ to the sample and then taking out all of the highs and focusing on the lows and really just getting like a feel for what that bassline is. So I'll play that so we can try to find the bassline. So I think you can hear it pretty clearly, and I think the next thing I'm going to do is actually write out that bass line. Alright, so after listening to the bass line from the sample, I was able to write a bass line, and I'm just using this sort of re-space sound, and I've already got some processing on it, but we'll get into that later. I'll show you what it sounds like on its own. Let me play that for you. Alright, and then with the melody, it sounds like this. Alright, I think it fits really good. I'm going to move on to the next step, which is drums. Alright, fast forward a little bit, and I've got some work done on the drums. I'm just going to work my way down on how I sort of made these drums. The first thing is the kick. I'll show you how that sounds. It's just a standard kick. It's not too clicky, but it's got a really nice tone to it. I got that from Splice as well. Next thing on the list is the claps, and I'll show you. There's actually two of them. I'll show you how they sound together. Okay. And then finally we have all the tops. I'll just play those all together. Alright, I'll show you how the drums sound when they're played all together. Alright, and then with the melody and the bass, here's how they sound. Alright, we're really starting to get somewhere, I think. It's starting to sound pretty good, but still needs a lot of work. Something I should probably get out of the way is some sidechain. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to make a group, and for now I'm going to stick the melody and the bass in that group. And then in this group, I'm going to add a compressor. Just grab the Ableton compressor. Alright, now that we have a compressor on the group, I'm going to set it to this view right here. And I'm going to open the sidechain and sidechain there. I'm going to rename this kick so it's easier to find. Alright, I'm going to set the sidechain to the kick. There it is right here. So now you can actually see the kick coming in, and then I'm going to lower the threshold. I'm going to just adjust the settings until I get what I exactly want. Alright, I think that sounds good. Everything's all sidechained. It makes it a lot more groovy now, and it's starting to come together. So it is sounding good so far, but it's a little bit empty, and I also think we are lacking some high end. Alright, jump forward a bit again, and I've made some progress. I ended up actually throwing in a Labs, which is a free plugin from Spitfire Audio, and I'm just using their soft piano sound. I actually drew out the chords from the melody as best as I could. I'll show you what they sound like. I think it's pretty accurate, and also did some processing on it. I slapped some OTT on there just so we could get a little bit crispier and a little bit of reverb as well. So it's a nice little touch, and also make sure that it's in the Sidechain group. I'll show you how that sounds. I also decided to throw in a little pluck melody on top of everything. I'll show you how that sounds. Even just adding small things like this can end up making a big difference. So I think what we need to do next is add some FX elements. Alright, so I added a couple things. I added a crash for when the drop hits. I also added this this breath sound I found on Splice, but I added a really long reverb and delay tail, so it also acts as sort of like a downlifter sort of thing. So here's what it sounds like when the drop actually hits with those two. Pretty good stuff. Also, one thing that I added is these little choir plucks, as I would call them, I guess. It's just little snippets of a choir sample that I have, and I think it sounds really cool in when it's chopped up like this. And I added it so it kicks in on the second half of the drop. So I'm just gonna play everything that I have so far, starting from the second half. So yeah, everything's really starting to come together. I think at this point I would probably move on and try to create maybe a build-up or a break. So I think the next step maybe is creating a build-up for this. Alright, jump forward yet again, and I'll show you what I've done so far. So first of all, I've added a sort of build-up to the actual drop. I'll show you how that sounds in a minute. But I've also just added some finishing touches to the mix, and I thought I would just break down how I was sort of mixing these things. First of all, the main melody, OTT, as I probably said before, it's a must. I really like how OTT sounds. Not too much, just a little bit. Can't go overboard with that. Next thing I have is a compressor, just standard compression, and then this auto filter is for the buildup. For the pluck, all I have is reverb. I didn't end up doing any EQing or anything on that. For the piano, I just did some reverb and OTT. For the bass, I added this plugin called Head Crusher I like. It's free, and you can get a really deep sound with it, and it's a really good distortion plugin. Also a compressor on the bass. OTT for those choir plucks. For the FX sound that I showed you earlier, it's just some reverb and delay and also some EQing. Here's the EQ, just getting rid of some lows and boosting some highs and cutting out some frequencies. Nothing on the crash, I just left it as is. So I actually have a drum bus, just a glue compressor on that. I did some EQing on the kick. Here's what that looks like, just taking out some highs and cutting some things. Alright, now that I broke down the mix, I'm going to show you what I did with the build-up. The build-up is essentially just a couple things taken from the drop and filtering in, but something that I did is I added this radio tuning sound that I found from Splice, and it's a really cool like ambient sound in the back. That's pretty cool. I also added some lo-fi like vinyl hiss. In the second half of the build-up, the claps and the hi-hats filter in, and I think that sounds pretty cool. Finally, we have some the crash that hits in the drop, it's reversed in, and also a rising snare. So yeah, I really like how this track turned out. It was a lot of fun to make, but yeah, I think it's time to just play the final result and show you everything I have so far. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I know that I'm on a pretty weird schedule with uploading, but I really want to keep uploading more tutorials like this one. I would greatly appreciate any suggestions on what you guys want to see next, and also a like and subscribe is very much appreciated. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next video, and take care.